So the ceasefire with Iran that was never really a ceasefire now appears to really be over. We have ended all trade with Spain, and Japan is now apparently an Islamic republic. If all or any of that is news to you, then you've been fortunate enough to have missed Donald Trump's performance on the world stage at this week's NATO summit, where in a series of bizarre press conferences, Donald Trump ran the gamut of sounding merely uninformed to downright addled and crazy. Take a listen to some of the highlights.
Is the ceasefire over? Is the ceasefire done? Is the MOU dead?
It's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. I told this story yesterday. We had 111 missiles shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan. They were shot at the aircraft, JCPOC. What a terrible deal. I call it the Obama nuclear waste deal. I don't want anything to do with Spain. Cut off all trade with Spain, please, including visits. Okay, we don't want anything to do. You know who's number one on TikTok? I am. I'm number one on TikTok. You have a question for President Putin, please? Do you have a question for President Putin? Not Zelensky. Putin. Yeah, what would you like to ask him? Because I'm going to ask him that question.
She's not sitting next to President Putin. I don't know what TikTok is. The Islamic Republic of Japan came out of his mouth. Marco Rubio is going to have to start standing next to him and translating. But unsurprisingly, Donald Trump's incomprehensible, unhinged, embarrassing, uninformed, me display there and his approach to geopolitics has had an effect. It appears to have finally exasperated and exhausted European leaders' patience. On that, the New York Times reports this, quote, a major motif of this year's NATO summit has to do with European leaders deciding whether it's politically advantageous to at last dispense with the niceties and fight back against Trump, as the Spanish and Italian leaders have started to do. The time when all European heads of state were playing nice with the mercurial American president is decidedly over. An exasperation that seems only likely to grow as Donald Trump's war with Iran threatens to tank everyone's economies. The New York Times reports this, quote, the global economy is set to slow sharply in 2026 after the war with Iran disrupted energy supply chains and triggered a fresh bout of inflation, the International Monetary Fund warned on Wednesday. The forecasts reflect the damaging toll from the decision by the U.S. and Israel to attack Iran this year. Donald Trump exhausting not just Americans' patience, but now the world as he humiliates himself on the world stage is where we begin again today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Staff writer at The Atlantic, Tom Nichols, is here. He's a professor emeritus of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College. Also joining us, Puck News senior political columnist and national affairs analyst John Heilman is back. And former ambassador to Russia and international affairs analyst Michael McFaul is here. Ambassador, I'm only half joking about having a translator there. He speaks now so incomprehensibly, and I guess it's old-fashioned, but I remember when the world hung on every word that an American president and an American ambassador, an American diplomat, and an American spokesperson said. And now we're all supposed to look the other way when he describes Japan as an Islamic republic and thinks he's sitting next to Putin.
It was crazy. I'm glad you pointed it out. A lot of people don't think it's crazy anymore, right? We've gotten so used to him speaking this way. We just give him a pass on all this. But that clip you just showed, these in other circumstances just a few years ago would have been major international crises. Today, this is just the way the president talks. And as you also said, rambling all over the place about different issues, all having to do with him personally, was also something very striking from the press conference. But on the substance, there's another thing that's very striking. In my world, everybody is calling this a success, this summit. And you know why? Because President Trump didn't walk out. He didn't blow up the NATO alliance. He didn't say he was going to leave. And that is the bar of success, I think also says a lot about where we are in terms of our relations with our allies today.
Tom, the bar has to be lowered because world leaders have their own electorates that they're responsive to. But that the bar has been so unceremoniously lowered, like so that it's underground, seems like something that should get more notice among American civic leaders. I mean, this is the guy that Jeff Bezos capitulated to and stood shoulder to shoulder. This is the guy that all the fanciest law firms in New York are now doing pro bono work for his commerce department. This is the guy that universities capitulated to. And this is a guy who doesn't know the difference between Japan and Iran.
It's almost like we have a relative in the room and there's something deeply wrong with him, and we've all agreed to not talk about it. But there is something deeply wrong with him. His friends know it. His critics know it. His staff, I'm sure, knows it. The world knows it. World leaders know it. And most importantly, our enemies know it, which is why they don't take him seriously, which is why nobody, as you pointed out, once upon a time, people hung on the word of the president. That's why nobody hangs on his words. They kind of do, but mostly out of freakish curiosity to see what kind of wild thing he's going to say next, not because his words have any inherent meaning or reflect policy. I spent years teaching students that when the president speaks, it's policy, and you must pay attention to when the president speaks because nobody can contradict him. Now, are we really cutting off all trade with Spain? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. It might have just been a stray electron, roaming around inside his brain pan. Who knows? But this is really dangerous because in the middle of all this stuff, and we can laugh about, the Islamic Republic of Japan and all of that, but he made several statements about an ongoing war that the United States is losing, and no one's even trying to pretend that they can make any sense of it. And I'll just add that one last thing that you just brought up. If this were any other president, this would be a national crisis. I mean, Joe Biden got somebody's name wrong, and it was headlines. The president gets all kinds of things wrong, completely, is out to lunch at an important NATO summit, and, it's Wednesday.
Well, as a reward for your astute point, I'm going to show you more of what he said today. This is a serious question about his security. His security is a legitimate and important question. And here's what he was asked and how he answered it.
Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I'd like you to address speculation that you're leaving Ankara not in the new Air Force One because of security concerns involving Iran. You've spoken today twice about them possibly assassinating you and possibly being successful. Did that concern have something to do with it?
Well, I speak about it a lot because, the life of a president is very dangerous. It's 5.2%. You know what a race car driver is? 1/10 of 1%. A bull rider, that looks pretty dangerous to me. It's 1/10 of 1%. No, it's 5.2% is you don't make it. There was another list came out yesterday, and I'm number one on. I like being number one on TikTok better, but I'm number one on the list for killing. Go ahead.
Hey, Sean McCreesh, New York Times. But why aren't you flying the new plane home?
Say what?
Why aren't you flying on the new Air Force One home?
It's flying to Europe, to one of the big bases, 2 or 3 of the big bases, where we can show it to the people. And we'll be going home by normal methods. But we have it going to Europe to a couple of bases, actually one in particular, but it's going to go to a couple of bases, stop, so the soldiers can see it because it's truly magnificent.
I mean, Tom Nichols, I'm again guilty of trying to understand what he's trying to say. And is he trying to say he's sending the plane on tour to showcase it to the men and women of the military? Is that how you understood that?
Maybe. I suspect what he's really saying is that because this version of Air Force One does not have a lot of the systems, important defense systems that the American version of Air Force One has, that his people in the Secret Service just didn't want him on it. which would be a completely understandable thing. If it were up to me, he would never set foot on this plane. I mean, you don't take a 747 given to you by a foreign country, even one that you might be friendly with, and let the president ride around in it with secure communications, talking to his advisors. Even if they pulled out every stud and ripped out every carpet, I just would never let the president on that plane. But I suspect that this air show story is because his advisor said, we can't send you into a war zone because Turkey is right next to where military operations are taking place, without the kind of protections that the actual Air Force One has on it. So I think it's a typical Trump moment of that would sound bad, and so he's got to come up with a story about how really it's just because the plane's so awesome, everybody wants to see it. But I don't think that's the real reason. I think it's a genuine security problem.